welcome back to the Healthtech Vision podcast, brought to you by SomX, where we break down the health tech news every single week. I feel like every time I say that, I've now got into this kind of rhythm where it just, falls out of my brain like a nursery rhyme. So it's practically a jingle in and of itself. So sorry, dear listeners, but I am thrilled to be joined today by a wonderful friend and, of course, expert, the brilliant, the only Nick Prentice. Nick, how you doing?
Hey Jess, I'm good, thanks. How are you? That's an intro and a half. I wouldn't go with expert, but loving it. Thank you. How's your week
Honestly,
going?
I feel like I sold you short, but,
No,
take it.
take it. I'm taking it.
My week is going fine. I'm looking forward to holiday. So I feel like whenever you take annual leave, it's always that kind of situation where you kind of need to take a holiday to get over the preparation for taking the holiday.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at the moment. But yeah, ask me tomorrow and I might feel differently. But that said, it's going to be our first flight with a very wriggly, slippery fish of a 9-month-old. Done long haul before. He's been great, but now he's moving around, and we will see. But do you know what? It's going to get us to somewhere sunny, and it's going to be good.
Will. Well, hopefully there's some innovator out there that's got the power through not just an iPad, hopefully in the future, but some sort of technology that you can procure anywhere, because I'm not biased against iPads, of course, that could potentially help your little one on flights, and hopefully other parents' little ones in the future. Keep them entertained, keep them active. There you go, innovators.
Until then, there's Miss Rachel. Shout out Vishal at YouTube, doing the most for YouTube health and YouTube kids. What a combo. Yeah, parents will know Miss Rachel. Wow, she solves a lot of problems for us all. Anyway, I'm not going to talk about children's TV anymore. I'm so sorry. Let's actually talk about something about health tech. Let's make it relevant.
Is that what we're here to do? Is this it? Is this health tech? I mean,
usually when we catch up, Nick, it's definitely not about health tech. It's wine, food, celebrating, doing fun things. But let's talk shop. Because I'll say you're an expert and I want to get your insights. So what's piquing your interest at the moment? What's getting you excited about health tech?
Well, I've been doing a lot of running around recently, back and forth from Europe and the US and the UK.
You jet setter.
I know. Getting those British Airways points, other airlines are available as well. But it's been really cool to see how ambient AI is being used in action. I've been seeing some really cool things across the Microsoft and Oracle spaces recently, where they're starting to really ramp up and see the potential benefits locally for clinicians to use ambient in action. So two big places I've been to recently in the US, as well as the role of AI agents within that space. So AI is also obviously the trend. It's the thing that unlocks the doors.
It wouldn't be Healthtech Pigeon unless we had started talking about AI within about, how far are we in?
Exactly.
Mere minutes
in. But also like the role of just agents as well, to try and make our lives and clinical lives a lot easier. From the moment you could potentially pick up the phone to your healthcare provider to going, hey, I've got this problem, and it pre-books things in advance for you, it pre-plans, it pre-thinks it. It was really cool to see through both Microsoft, Oracle, and other products providers that are out there, that the capability was getting there. It's learning, it's seeing it, it's available, and it's just about us trusting it now. And it was just really, really exciting to see that hopefully one day I can pick up the phone to my GP and go, hey, I don't feel well, I think I've got this. It might think I need this clinician to give me this specialist advice. It goes and pre-books all of that, and the GP just has to hit approve. I'd love that in the future. But
do you know what? I feel like I really needed one of those with getting ready for this holiday. That would have just made such a difference. I need to investigate some agents for my personal life, some assistants in my personal life, and then maybe that gives me the trust and confidence to think about how might I be comfortable using it in my healthcare experience.
if it helps, I've tried to do it recently with my own wardrobe of traveling to half of these places. It's like, oh my God. And for people who do know me, I love a good jazzy blazer. So it's like, oh, how do I keep that wardrobe flowing through? So from there you go, lifestyle all the way through to medical, it could happen.
Nice. And did it work?
But also, it helped. I wouldn't say it worked, but it
Okay,
helped.
fine.
Florida's very moist this time of year, shall we say?
Oh, he went there.
So I went there. But yes, but it was good all the same. But it kind of leads into, I don't know if you saw, Jess, from your conversation. I listened to the podcast last week for those who are keeping along with the series. NHS Online, like that's also something that's
Did
quite
I see it?
excited me.
I
Did anyone see
feel
it?
like you might be the only person who's excited about it. So Jess, but yeah, I mean, James and I had a good old ramble about this last week, and I for one was quite cynical about it because it was an announcement at a party conference, and beautiful headline, not much detail really, a bit thin on the ground, but I think, great intentions, but I know you feel a bit differently, and actually you did write a really good article on it, which I won't say it changed my mind, but it did give me a bit of insight that I appreciated. But I mean, you're looking at lots of these technologies, and you're looking at a lot of these infrastructure changes on a daily basis. So what was your take on it? Tell me why you were excited.
Oh, excited mainly because it is the next great big experiment for healthcare in the UK, massively. England, obviously, specifically, but for Scotland and Wales to learn off of, Northern Ireland to pick up for the others, but also the rest of the world to watch how the NHS in England, I will define that, is looking at trying to take a banking approach to changing healthcare. So where we've gone, banking is all online, your services are all now online, it brings a new, fresh perspective on how we can operate those healthcare providers. Massive concerns for GPs, massive kind of like, oh my God, what's going to happen to the role of the GP? How are we going to access those primary care services? How am I going to still talk to them instead of bypassing them, going straight to a specialist, which in the US happens all the time. Go and just contact your pediatrician, your gynecologist. You can go and do that. So it's making us think a little bit differently around how we as a consumer of health access those services. But hopefully it's the right way forward. And if the experiment's done well, by just thinking a little bit different around, yes, we've digitized the access, but actually we've redesigned the pathway properly to meet modern healthcare kind of functions, considering like the workforce within it, the kind of the incentives of how it operates and how the governance is run, etc. How is that the role for an NHS provider? Is that a role for a GP? Is there a new health provider coming out? I don't know. The policy experts in NHS England and Department of Health that I'm sure are running behind it, but there's definitely something for the rest of the world to kind of keep an eye on as the NHS opens up a new way forward. We've digitized, we've got EPRs in, so we've got hopefully, well, nearly there, nearly there, but it's now okay, cool. It's opening that next chapter, hopefully, for us for health leaders to consider differently. I don't know. What do you think after reading my blog? What was your kind of what changed your mind of it? Because yeah, there's so many. There's cynics. There's loads of people out there who are trying to just get their head around a very big announcement.
Yeah, it is a big announcement. I think, as I said, much like the 10-year plan, there wasn't that much meat on the bones, and there wasn't a lot to work with. So it almost raises more questions than it answers. And I think
vision.
Well,
Got a plan, vision, like
I agree. The title is plan, right? And I think, yeah, I think part of the frustration comes from the fact that you're right. So we had the 10-year plan, but really it's a vision, and so that's light on detail already, and so we expect that then what follows is some of that detail and more of an actual plan. So I think what has happened is that there's frustrations now where there's more lofty aspirations without a real framework and scaffold for how we achieve it. And I think, some of what you said there does resonate, because the NHS is a legacy set of organizations and systems. And, if you were playing The Sims, right, you would burn the whole thing down and you would start again. And that doesn't put any.
Yes.
Full disclosure, I've never played The Sims, and that's really embarrassing to admit because I feel like it's well,
Yeah.
I wasn't cool growing up. I'm just gonna
Look,
say that.
even some of the non-cool kids played Sims there, Jess.
All right, so I was really uncool. So in the wound, jeez. But as I say, if you wanted, we think about digital and a lot of what we're doing and have done to date with not just the NHS but other legacy health systems around the world is layering digital on top of what we already have. And I can use the analogy because it's fresh in my mind because we're having a bathroom done in our house, and you can either utilize the existing plumbing and then put some fancy wrappers around it, or you can add in some extra plumbing but you keep the original, or you just scrap everything and you start again. With legacy health systems, we don't have the benefit of being able to do a Sims, a completely burn everything to the ground, start again, and replumb from scratch. And so I think probably, and so yes, so what we've been doing is kind of layering digital into what we already have, and we know that doesn't always get us to where we want to be. And I think it's really interesting when you see, by contrast, some of what's happening in the Middle East, where Neom, for example, they are building absolutely from scratch with state-of-the-art technology. They're not having to build on top of things. There are no workarounds. You're starting with the best of the best of the best, and you're figuring out, what do we want? How do we want it to work? What do we want to achieve? What do we want that experience to look like? Rather than having to plumb around or piping, or in an old rickety house and put new piping in. And so I think what you were saying there about, it's an interesting experiment. I'm going to come back to that word. That was interesting use of language. But what it does do is create this new layer, which you've talked about, which is not, yes, layered in some respects, but it also is separate. So it's not to start with replacing anything that does exist, but it's a new way of starting something from scratch to figure out how does it work in practice, and then how do we perhaps roll that out more broadly. And there's assumptions baked into that, I appreciate, but I think for me that's what is potentially quite compelling about this, which is it's an opportunity to completely rethink how we access our health and our health experience. And it made me think of something, actually. You're saying about doing taking the banking approach to healthcare, and you can now, obviously, whatever bank you're with, you can, on your app, you can aggregate all of your accounts, even from other banks, into an app. So if you're banking with NatWest, the banks obviously are available. If you want to sponsor the podcast, hit me up. Or any other banks, indeed. But if you bank with NatWest, but you can see your Lloyd's account, you can see maybe your ISAs from different providers, all in one space. And it'd be interesting. They're talking about the NHS app kind of being the front door of this. But also, wouldn't it be interesting if actually you had a preferred health app that you're using? It might be the Apple Health app, but actually everything aggregates into one place, so you can choose whatever front door you have. And maybe that's where the agentic side comes in, I think, potentially, because there's technologies now that allow you to tell your phone that you want to do something. It can go into different apps and create different actions. So that's potentially interesting.
Huge. Agreed. And I think everything you've just touched on there, we have been doing in England in some way or disguise over the last 10 years. This is 10 years in the making of getting government, senior leaders, policymakers, funders, commissioners, clinicians, the public into this new way of operating. It's taken 10, I remember 2015, it's taken 10 years to get to this point. I mean, it's taken 20 years if you want to go back to 2005 when we were putting IT in the first place into the NHS. It's all been one big, great experiment to get us to this day where finally, at some point, a politician is very comfortably on stage going, actually, I'm going to take a risk and trust in this. So I hope that does pay off, because we've got in the UK, and this is why I say experiment, because it's good for other health providers to across the world to consider, but also for innovators to consider as well. They've already got the culture of continuous improvement, drum that in for years. They've already got the culture of digital, drum that in for years. It's now bringing that together around process redesign properly
Mm,
and actually taking a step back and going, what does my future citizen need? And I say
mm,
citizen, not patient, because they're
mm,
not patients at that point.
mm,
Their health in the UK has evolved so much into
mm,
prevention is now in the cure
mm,
element. Bye bye, Public Health England. Ta-da!
mm,
Like
mm,
gone are those days where your smoking cessation was commissioned through those areas. So now it's just considering in a different way of pulling all those bits together
mm,
to do what you've just said. It's enabling all of those bits, and
mm,
I hope the policy makers in this space learn from new hospital program. I mean, hey, we're building in the UK. We're building those hospitals, but learn from what they've done in process redesign there, as well as the NHS frontline digitalisation team, and pulling those two bits of knowledge pieces together and going, actually, what could we do next? So
mm.
yeah, well, and the clinical, sorry, and the clinicians as well. Can't forget that. It's the kind of national clinical directors that come with that and play a huge role in that space as well. But again, back to the experiment point, this is where other providers, the big providers in the US, the Singapore healthcare organizations, even in Australia, it's really cool for them to kind of pick up on actually how are they
Mm,
piecing all of these different bits together to not just put a new layer on top, but actually give the chance to redesign the way that we can access it. Like I'm very hopeful
mm,
for the ambient AI person taking in the information as I've said, sending it off,
mm,
getting that approval. They then send me a test kit that I can then do somewhere or pick up from the pharmacy. That
mm.
then goes up. Like, how can I speed that up
Yeah.
rather than bringing that together? And I saw something kind of written down recently around that, around hospitals stop being hospitals. They're more high
Mm,
tech hubs of community of care at scale rather than I have to go to hospital. No, I need to go
mm,
to a medical center. I need to go to somewhere else because I've accessed it through somewhere else.
mm,
Same with online banking. I've
mm,
accessed my online banking. I've got to a point where I can't do any more with it because it's said computer says no probably. So I've had to go to that high street bank where there's not a lot left, but they're contained high street banks
mm,
around the place, and you can go in and access it to go and find all those different bits. But let's say experiment
mm.
is the huge word that plays into it.
Yeah. I think I said I was going to come back to this word experiment. I absolutely get why you're using it, but I also think in healthcare it's quite a scary word,
Oh,
um,
huge.
because as we've talked about, lives are at stake, and so the the level of experimentation that you can do within the realms of what is safe, appropriate, and ethical, it is really limited. And so, I guess, to your point, lots of this stuff has been tested before, and it's now putting it into place in a system and a structure so that it's not, desperate pilots working in silos. It's how does this stuff work as a system, as a workflow, as a patient journey, as a clinical experience. Um, so so I do get it from that perspective. So it feels like it's a kind of, if we want to use the word experiment, it's a safe space for that experimentation. But
You're not doing it on live. It's not on live customers. This is the
yeah,
fun part as well. They're doing this experiment not on live customers, whereas half of these experiments so far have been on live consumers. They've been on live things that have happened so far. We've had to because we've had to show that it's there. Whereas there's a chance to test it, hopefully, on a group to start with. Maybe diabetes, maybe
mm,
dermatology, maybe those core disease areas that we all keep trying to focus on here in the UK, but also across the world. What are those kind of what's the big population health problem that's easy solvable that will stop somebody from going to A&E?
golden question, Nick, and that is the information I really feel like they should have brought to the table. I feel like I'm sorry, but I feel like they were like, we need to say something at party conference. Is this work going to be ready in time? And they were like, do you know what, we're probably working on it, but we haven't got it to where it needs to be. But ultimately you've got a deadline, so like I feel like that work just should have been done. And I feel that it would have been far better received if they could have come to the table with that actual plan to say, we're going to focus in these areas, or this is our priority, or here's a some of the detail behind how it's going to work in practice. And I think it would have had a much more warm reception rather than people being skeptical that it's a political play. And so I think that some of that thinking should have been done. Is my opinion. It doesn't change things, me whinging about it. But I just think it's a shame, because healthcare is so important, and it's all to play for. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's doing a disservice to the work that they are actually doing and the things that they do want to achieve, because it feels empty. And I think after everything that we've been through with the last government over the last 14 years, people need something over here in the UK, I should say. Won't comment on other countries' governments.
Other countries may vary.
Yeah, exactly. But I just feel like we need something that just feels more concrete. And I know that will come, but I don't know. Read the room, I guess, is my takeaway there.
100% read the room. To counter your argument slightly, while I've sat in the room on the side that you speak of, there has to be a vision. And the UK government has always been about the now and here. Whereas, like the 10-year plan, they were trying to describe the future. It was missing that key element, I think, of this. We're going to go NHS online. It's the health secretary's bold decision. We're doing this. Let's move with the times, people. I'm bringing his clients, his customers, which are us as the general public, on that journey to move forward that previous governments were scared to make decisions of. I mean, the US sadly does not have the opportunity because it's not plumbed in that way. But if you look to the Netherlands has an insurance base, and it works in that way for that reason. They move with the times, and they go forward. So,
well, I mean, I'm grateful for your perspective, and I think James and I, as I say, were grumbling at each other last week, but I appreciate that this is last week's news. So should we talk about some of this week's news?
yeah, what's exciting? Tell me, like, what's happening? I read the pigeon to like tell me what's about to like come in, like my next week's LinkedIn posts.
Well, let's get into the news. Okay, so there is a lot of chatter and cheaping this week in Pigeon about fundraising and fundraisers, which is really cool. I think there's lots of reason to be optimistic, and I think some really positive signals, I hope. Maybe it's some over optimism, but I've gone from being a skeptical cynic to being optimistic and excited. But our first story is from Lauxera Capital, has closed a pretty epic €400 million Healthtech fund.
God,
Yeah,
wow.
huge. But that is not the most interesting thing. The most interesting thing for me is, first of all, it's their second fund. But the second thing is they have offices in Paris and in San Francisco. So they're super focused on creating this kind of bridge between Europe and the US, but in particular, really doubling down and backing European health tech to help it achieve that scale across the pond in the US and in other markets as well. So yeah, it was established by Samuel Levy. He is a clinician turned entrepreneur, which is pretty cool. Pierre Moustial, a seasoned pharma executive, and Alex Slack, who is a healthcare specialist investor. I mean, minus points for an all male founding team, but won't hold it against them. Do some good things and build a good team, which it looks like they have. Um,
Well, let's hope they try and do some cool things and actually enabling prevention of healthcare and helping people survive a lot longer in that space. I think that's hopefully the nice thing. Like seeing it in Europe as well, Paris of all places, that's quite
mm,
big, especially for
yeah.
like France. I haven't seen
Mm,
a lot come out of there from a fundraising part in a while. Obviously, I can see their French US base as well. I think they're on the west coast of the US, but it's a really good sign, and especially for industries over here who aren't benefiting from the delightful tariffs that some of our
mm,
consumers are currently seeing, and hopefully will change that. Because I think if I saw correctly as well, they're doing kind of helping develop treatments and manufacturing techniques and different places. It all falls under the fund in terms of the different types of bits that they're funding under that raise. Um, and one thing that continues to see as a trend as well is the AI powered image technologies. There's been so much in that space. And I think in the UK, it dropped given the changes to government and focus and things. But I think it's really good to see that it's coming back up again, especially in kind of clinical trials on obesity and immunology. Um, I think yeah, there's just a lot that can come from this into that space and boost the European and hopefully UK if it plays a role in it. Healthcare systems into that space.
no, I forgot for a moment that the UK wasn't part of Europe.
It's not part of Europe. Remember those days? Remember
Yeah. God, way back when.
way back when?
But I think so. Interestingly, their thesis is, as you said, is around. Well, it includes things like AI-driven diagnostics. So you've already touched on that, smart medical devices, and platforms enhancing healthcare delivery. Which we've talked a lot about that for probably the last 20 minutes or so. Um, with the NHS Online Hospital and some of the infrastructure that's required around that. So it's an interesting spread, and I think especially as I said, this is our second fund, and they've previously um, invested in Natural Cycles, which is the only FDA approved non-hormonal contraceptive app, but obviously is a
Ooh,
consumer device, and so I guess this feels more on the health system side rather than the consumer side, perhaps, particularly because as they've announced this second fund, they've also announced two investments that they've already made in a German neurovascular device for stroke and aneurysm, but also a Swedish company who are doing AI powered imaging tech for clinical trials and all of that kind of thing. So I think,
that's exciting.
yeah, it's really exciting, and it shows the breadth of, I suppose, where their interest lies. But yeah, I'm just piqued my interest because I know Natural Cycle is super popular, but clearly more on the consumer side, and a lot of what they're talking about here is more on the kind of infrastructure health system side. So
Massive. And it's a big nod for insurers as well, for those healthcare insurance providers to go and start thinking, ooh, what's the next bit of healthcare that's coming out? What do we need to consider as they redesign their pathways as well into how they provide different bits of care um, for their consumers? How are they looking at potentially their customers playing a role in those clinical trials? How are they looking at those customers potentially picking up some of these devices in different ways, as you say, that consumer-led approach to helping people save lives, but also for the insurers, but actually for employers. So actually in Europe, their health system is more, some countries are more and less public and private, but it is run by an insurer base. So actually, how are they redesigning those pathways to meet that future bit, but also for health insurers to get themselves ready for employers to start requesting some of these
mm,
technologies to help their people stay at work. It's not all about burdening the public health sector and burdening the other bits.
mm,
It's how me as an employer, how I'm helping my team stay alive. How am I helping
mm,
them stay well in this modern age hybrid, of being home and out.
Mm.
For those who live in the UK, you will have noticed there's been a massive cold that's gone round over the last 2-3
Cold
weeks.
or COVID?
Cold or COVID, who knows? But could my employer currently help with that? Yeah, they could send me to a GP,
Mm.
but actually, could they have got me to do some of those other bits? I
Mm.
don't know. I can't speak for my employer on this podcast for obvious reasons. Other employers vary. But it's about how how we can also get those employers playing a role in that. So I think the story is a very good nod to both the manufacturing industry, good, money's coming hopefully your way.
Mm.
In Europe, great. It's not all about the US and other bits for once, but also um, to those healthcare providers and customers who are looking to see that they're going to be looked after in the future of the healthcare, especially as we look at obesity and immunology. We can't just put jabs in ourselves to lose weight around obesity. There has to be other ways, hopefully, in the future to do that.
Mm.
So I'm seeing it as a hopefully positive nod
Mm.
from it. I mean, the bias in me is hopefully they don't flop and then the money all runs out.
They're
So I
not
think
going to. They're not going to.
no,
Come on,
they're not going to.
optimism.
No, but
No.
shout no, but I think massive shout out to those innovators who are probably under that funding in that space. Hopefully, like, let's make it worth it. Let's
Mm.
connect. Let's bring it together. Don't do it in silo. Let's work
Yeah.
together on it. How can you share
Mm.
some of your wisdom about from that as well to other innovators in that
Mm.
space? Would be really, really cool to see
Yeah.
potentially.
Interesting what you said about employers and helping to support people to be well and cynically or not, maybe like supporting people back to work. Because I had a conversation earlier this week with a company called Your Brain Health, and they have a platform called Screen It, which basically aggregates, I think, like over 70, probably more than that, different brain health assessments, from psychological to physical to cognitive, but all into one place, and kind of creating. So you can go and you can treat it as a preventative measure. You have baseline assessments, and you can obviously track over time. But if you've had a head injury, so if you're in a sports team, for example, you have a head injury, um, and it's about supporting you back to play. If you're in a school, or in this case, as you were saying, a work environment, it's actually not necessarily about getting back to play. It's looking at, it's tracking your brain health to support you back into your life slash, for employers, back into work. I say as quickly as possible, but in a caring way, in the sense that in getting you back to optimal brain health as quickly as possible, whether that's from that mental, cognitive, or physical perspective.
Yeah.
I hadn't really, for their technology in particular, I obviously was familiar with those,
Mm.
why, well, the use case would be in contact sports, and maybe in schools where kids run into each other or into lampposts or whatever. But from that employer and then perspective, and getting back to work or to learning, that's how valuable it could be in supporting with that, by having that information, and getting people the treatment they need more quickly,
Yeah.
but being able to track that recovery, or proactively track how people are managing.
100%. And I think there's something around. So for those who have read a policy document back from 2 governments ago, I can't know how many governments we've had in the UK. There was a goal to get and find the economically inactive of the country. I hated the term, but somebody wrote it. And it was all around public sector organizations playing a role in it. Whereas I sat there and was like, no, hang on.
Mm.
The private sector, the industry, the employers have to play a role in helping keep their employees safe, well, alive,
Mm.
running, to help their own productivity, because they will suffer because the NHS is suffering at the moment in the UK.
Mm.
Same will happen in Australia. If a healthcare provider is overloaded at A&E and the only place that person to go is there, they're stuck. They're in that space. Whereas, to your point, if I can, I'd love to see, hopefully one day as an employer, through my insurer, because the insurer has to play a role in it, that I can provide that type of service to my employee to help them feel well and safe, and they can come back to work, reduces the amount of time that I've got them off, hopefully will help them deliver some quite cool stuff for my organization, but also makes them feel safe and looked after and takes that pressure off the other markets as well.
Let's talk about another exciting race. So, yeah, ambient voice scribe platform, Healthtech platform Heidi, have raised 65 million Australian dollars, which has shot their valuation up to 465 million Australian dollars too, which is not an insignificant sum of money. But I think the reason that for me this is interesting is because I think it signals a trend that we are seeing. There is clearly a lot of appetite for ambient voice AI in a clinical setting. There's a lot of companies doing this right now. I think Nick, you will have seen between your role between here, the US, and so many other countries around the world, but the US really is dominating here. So,
Really is.
yeah, what's your take on where we're headed with ambient voice scribes?
Yeah, so there's a couple of bits to kind of contend with that, and I'm sure listeners also resonate with this. There's one, the demand. Actually, are healthcare providers ready to receive? Are they ready to invest within this space? I think that's one thing to consider themselves. Have they redesigned their processes? Have they done the core bits that are needed to not replace people but enable people in a different way? So the whole way from, have they looked at how they can consume their customer in, through to actually what does that person do who no longer answers the phone, or that scribe, or that thing that is taking it in, so that the chatbot taking notes, to helping arrange follow-ups. Are they ready from that side? So I think there's something to consider there. You're talking about the US being big in that space. I think I read something recently. It's like the predictive spend on ambient voice across the globe last year, I think, was around 400 million US dollars, and that's growing. It was dominated, I think, by America's massively. I think it was like 200 odd mil, followed by EMEA, followed by ASPAC. But that shows a quite interesting trend around, have they got the cloud technology available in those countries? Have they invested? And I think it's quite an interesting space to see how the US came first, and they clearly got ready sneakily under the radar without us knowing, well, at least in healthcare, none of us really realised. Whereas the other countries didn't quite get, other countries are slowly catching up. I think maybe someone was hoping someday legislation would allow us to just use the cloud in the US, but given the war on data and privacy, consumers are still saying, no, I want to know that my data is safe in my country. So getting those two conditions right, that followed by the tech, will really show how it could work within hopefully the rest of the world. Saw some really cool demos recently of Microsoft using it, Oracle using it, as I mentioned earlier. But seeing that Heidi moving to that space, and that they're raising that as well, there will be others that will come on board, and it won't just be the big tech players that play that. As long as they build that integration in, don't forget to integrate with your EHR providers. Make it easier for your customer. That's the bit that's just got my mind on it. But yeah, as I mentioned earlier, world's your oyster once you got it in. Like, if it's taking it from a quite cool clinical protocol, hopefully one day I can just talk to a bot and it tells my GP what's wrong with me. My GP tries to vet it and it checks my results, and then it schedules appointments hopefully for me predictively without without having to wait around. Like, the usage of ambient voice products to do that is quite cool. So yeah.
Won't you miss talking to a person?
Will I miss the sassy person answering the phone and having a fun old conversation? Probably, but we're in a world where we've got a mixed demand. I think we've got different generations, people who don't want to talk to people, literally do not want to pick up the phone and do that, to the ones who just need efficiency and run and quick, to the people who actually like that little bit of a chat. So that's something for healthcare providers to get right. Personally, it depends on my mood if I want to talk to somebody or not. It depends how I'm feeling
Yeah,
on the day. Oh, do I just want to quickly get it done? Do I want a cheat system? But this is how it's quite cool, and how I've seen some AI ambient voice AI products used recently. It's actually changing their tone, and you don't realize you're not talking to a real person. Actually, the way that it's set up and the way that it operates is quite interesting. So,
but isn't that a bit Black Mirror? Like, I
oh,
don't know how I feel
100%,
about that.
100%, 100%. But I think we're moving to that age
Mm.
of trying to make things more efficient and quicker. Maybe there's a product that actually listens to your phone call with a real person and then it does it all for you. Who knows?
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
because it still needs us. We are not being
Mm.
replaced here. We're being
Yeah,
enabled differently.
yeah, and I mean, I also take the point that obviously there are workforce challenges. There's workforce shortages, and there aren't enough people to be able to do the peopling. But and maybe when we talk about use cases for these products, we talk about it from the patient consumer system perspective as much as from the clinical perspective. There are certain use cases where certain things I know that I would be experiencing that I just want to talk to a person. Whereas to your point, there are certain things which I just want to get it dealt with quickly. I broadly know what I need. It doesn't need a long conversation. And I would be more than happy to then speak to some kind of agent that can just sort it quickly, because what I need from that experience is speed, versus a different experience where I need a conversation, I need a hand on my shoulder, and I need to have a shared experience. And so I guess what's interesting to me is how we differentiate the two and identify the use cases where that technology is appropriate, and and we get the value we need from it without overstepping into a space where you have someone who's talking about something very vulnerable. Maybe it's a mental health condition, or mental health symptoms perhaps, that warrants and absolutely should have a conversation with a person.
But this is where those product providers work with the healthcare providers to tailor that pathway. Don't just
Mm,
stick the thing on top of another thing. Back to what I said earlier, don't just stick it
mm,
on top. Don't just make it squeeze in. You've got to rebuild it, and you've got to think of your citizen, you've got to think of your patient, you've got to think of your customer. Um, and also learn from others, like learn from banking, learn from how you order your pizza, learn from those experiences of what do those people like, to the point you just have personas. But it's also how we can help train it into the ambient voice is a gateway now to hopefully get me to somewhere. There's always a clinician at the other end that's going to look and go, what the hell is happening here? No, I need to go and talk to them. Like, we need to have some type of conversation in the future of, to your point, the different use cases that it comes in for, and making us feel comfortable as a as a consumer to that,
mm,
to know that we're going to be looked after and safe. At the moment, we don't know how to trust it, because
mm,
it's new, it's alien, it's something different. Um, but actually, if we know it's being safe and we can trust those companies to use it in the right way, the providers and the sorry, both provider and the product provider and the healthcare provider. Sorry, that's what I was going with that. I think that's a bigger thing, but that's a massive
mm,
PR exercise for some health vendor at some point in the future. But also, could it then open up the door? Something to consider for listeners as well. What does the future health provider look in 5 years? Is there
mm,
a automated health provider that just runs off with it? Hello, Babylon. Do we all remember those days? Or does it move us into the days of, actually, I want to have a personalized, more personalized care experience? How do we give that person the option to choose? Reflecting on NHS Online, I don't want to have to deal with a human. I want to just get on with it, process it through. Or actually, I've got to that stage where I do need someone to help
mm,
and guide me through it. So it's another avenue and door for, as you say,
mm.
for people to come into.
I
I'm
just have
biased,
visions
yeah.
of a healthcare vending machine, and I don't know why.
Yeah,
Can you imagine? I have
I
that
can.
one,
Yeah, no,
but
no, no, yeah.
then the analogy that is just so real right now is that if you look at those old school vending machines and you put in your number and then you want the crunchy, and then the crunchy gets caught in the system and you can't get it out, and you're rocking the flipping vending machine to try and get the crunchy out. And then in the end you have to give up and leave it, and then have to go get another appointment and go back through the system once again.
No, but that's poor design. That's poor design.
Yeah.
How have you redesigned? And this is where I come back to I've seen it so many times where someone's gone, I've got this shiny new piece of tech that's going to revolutionize my... Cool, but what's the difference your product will make with somebody who's putting it in? Like, help me change it. Don't just turn up and flick a switch and hope it's all going to work. We need to well, hopefully we have, but we need to move away from that space to investors, to healthcare providers, putting money into that change, training, and enablement space to make ambient voice work. Like, at the end of the day, all the way through from getting the right cloud technology to everywhere else. Again, as I said earlier, like, you can see the different bits where America's got there first, EMA's catching up, and ASPAC is on its way, because they've got to build the different types of actual power to make it work. So give it a few years. But I think if I read the article rightly as well, there's a UK primary care provider that's going to put Heidi in. So I'll be really cool and interested to see of how it comes out for all you CIOs listening out there. Let's see if there's a case study that they're going to publish at some point. I'd love to see it.
I want to ask a question. I want to get your thoughts. Like, clearly, seeing a raise like this is a really interesting signal to the market that clearly ambient voice technology is... people are excited about it. People are seeing potential in it as a technology. I wonder, and this is what I want your view on. You talk about integration. Surely things like ambient voice technology at some point just becomes a feature of bigger platforms. Like, where does it stop being a standalone technology in and of its own, and where does it start just becoming a feature? So, you get the big providers, EPRs, the Epics of the world, even Microsoft. When you think the contracts that Microsoft have with the NHS and all the different programs that get used, and surely this is just something that those providers they can just embed themselves, and then where does that leave seemingly an entire emerging industry? Because, as you said, there are so many different companies popping up that are providing these technologies. What's the business case for and against that? Because I'm not being cynical. I'm just thinking through how often these things work in practice, that some things often I find in this space feel like a feature more than a product, and I feel that I don't know when that transition starts happening.
So there's something in that around... it used to be, if you went big, it was slow, and if you went small, it was fast. And I'm talking here about healthcare providers for those who is listening. It's the product providers in that space where it's quite interesting, though, where I'm going to use Microsoft and Oracle as two examples of here where they've caught up. They've created studios where you can go and create your own AI product yourself in there, and you can develop it and make it run yourself on their product and make it as quick as possible to deploy into your own domain. That's something that was never massively available before without them as a product provider having to create that through. So I think there's a it's in their ecosystem, it works, but it works to a point as much as the product provider has developed their AI agent to operate. And I say AI agent because the agent is potentially the new integration piece. How you get into the agent, either through AI voice, through typing, through other areas. God, let's see who's next. It might just be a facial recognition at one point that just reads my face and goes, Nick, you're off. And for those who know my face, it looks off sometimes. But I think it'll be really interesting to see how healthcare providers either stick with the big bets and go, we're trusting you here, or they go, do you know what? We want to keep innovating quickly. We want to keep innovating fast. I'm going to pick on that smaller company who can give me that quicker response time. Provide that design suite as well. I think every AI technology provider should be able to give them that suite, but look to that space to make it work. And also remember, some of these AI products use Copilots, some of them use Oracle, some of them use Google's, so they use in disguise. So it's also around, do you want to make your life easier and give it to a small vendor who will keep up with pace and wants to help you change that, or do you develop it in-house and make it work for yourself and have your own continuous improvement program that sits behind it? I don't know, but I think it's definitely, to your point, a signal to the market that this is something that isn't going away, and we know that. But to quote a senior leader who I can't sadly name on this podcast, but one day hopefully they may feature, this is the slowest point that AI is operating in, the scale. This is the slow time. We're still getting our head into it. We're still making it work. 3 to 5 years' time, we're going to be on steroids, literally running this through. So I think, to your point, it's how I think the product players, the big ones, have made it so they can go as quick as they can. But to the smaller vendors, there's still a market if they keep up, if they build those strong relationships with their customers to help them innovate quickly and redesign quickly. We saw it happened in COVID. It could happen again.
Nick, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I feel like we've covered a lot of ground. And, I was right. You're an expert, and those insights were phenomenal.
Thank you. I mean, we've done a sweep of the whole AI industry there in one fell swoop. But yeah, let us know if we've missed anything. I think that's the bigger bit. Like, what? Let's keep conversations going. Let's keep it chatting. But thanks for having me.
Hope to see you again very soon. And to all our listeners, catch you next week.